And then he said, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills.
I can't catch a break, guys.
Yeah.
Get them the fuck away from me. I can't be around those guys.
People think, oh, well, cleaning your room, that's just a cliche. It's like, yeah, really, eh? Just go ahead and try it.
If people had any idea how powerful sleep is for healing from anything, and the fact that it's free.
My mind is absolutely bulletproof, solid as a rock.
Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Fighting Fit Show. We are currently deep in our series of your food journey to freedom. So, we're kind of covering all things disordered eating, eating disorders, just honoring your hunger, understanding the relationship with food, that kind of thing. And we're currently, this is our fourth episode maybe doing this series. And I'm really enjoying it. I hope people are learning a little bit and at least just beginning to understand what the current diet / gym / world of food and, where the people are in terms of, their general eating habits are. I hope that this is helpful in some way because, again, it's just nice to kind of be a fly on the wall listening to two coaches, I would hope, talking about it because I'm certainly enjoying it and finding it engaging and interesting. Last week, we just kind of left off with honoring your hunger, I think. I think that was kind of where we wrapped things up. This week, where do you want to pick things up from, Chris?
Making peace with food. So before we go into the next one, let's just quickly go over honor your hunger. So the 3 points that we mentioned in that one were recognize your physical hunger cues, practice mindful eating and tune into your body signals, and then develop strategies for nourishing yourself when you are hungry.
Okay. And so obviously the big action step there for honoring your hunger, one or two action steps. Well, what are they?
Actually eat when you're hungry and stop when you are full. So actually trying to eat when you're not distracted. So eat when you're eating rather than being on your phone or watching TV or something like that. So eat, enjoy your food, and notice how full you are as you eat. And there is a little bit of a lag in time. It takes you roughly about 15 minutes to recognize that you're actually full. So if you gorge and you eat real fast, which is a lot easier to do when you're distracted, you can miss these hunger or these satiety signals and end up stuffed and overfed.
Interesting. And another thing I would say, that could probably go, very universal across this, and it might seem very stupid, or maybe not stupid, but might seem very on the nose, but is it like a food journal? It's like for not only a food tracker, but obviously and importantly a food tracker, especially if you're looking to lose weight, it's like, what are you eating? If you're trying to gain weight, it's like, what actually are you eating? But if you're kind of going for, maybe you don't have weight to lose, maybe you don't have weight to gain, but again, maybe you're training for performance. There's always kind of something that food is fueling, because we always have a goal and food's kind of always relevant to the goal. Not that it's always the be all or end all, but it's always playing some kind of role. And so it's important that, you're orientating your overall food. Like maybe you should be eating, quote unquote maintenance. Maybe you should be eating more than you think. Maybe you should be eating less than you're used to, whatever it is. And so keeping a track of that's super important, but also, how did you feel about that? And so we kind of start bringing in the mindfulness practice. Like, are you being mindful about how you're feeling when you're eating? So it's like, oh, I felt absolutely starving, I had to eat something. It's like, so you felt you had to eat and it was urgent. It's like, and then maybe we address that, and then maybe after you can kind of analyze it a little bit. And it's like, was it as urgent as you thought it was? No, geez, it was just a craving. I just had a crazy craving. It's like, or maybe you're really, really busy and you didn't realize how hungry you were. You hadn't eaten in 9 hours. It's like, and so again, it's like, it's just important to kind of check in with yourself. It's like, oh, I had a fight with my mom, and the next thing I knew, I was halfway through the bag of Doritos. It's like, so, maybe you're an emotional eater. And so maybe it's important to kind of tune into these.
Just since you're on about journaling, I think there's a couple of key points. If you want to make your own journal, you just grab a book and a pen, and then you write down breakfast, then you write down lunch, you write down dinner, and then you write down snacks. And then you go for breakfast, you write down what did you eat, why you ate it, and how you felt when you did it. And these can be 2 words or even like 1 sentence when you're writing this out. But what it will do is it will make it clear, and then it will give you a record to look back on, because the brain is very, very good at forgetting things. It's really, really good at forgetting things. It's really good. It's good at remembering stuff too, but it's better at forgetting things. You take in so much information on a daily basis, especially in today's day and age. People are very, very easy, or their meals are, and how they felt when they're eating their meals and why they were eating their meals is very easily forgotten. When you have a journal, you can look back at it, and then you can start to recognize patterns. So you can be like, Monday, at my lunch I felt anxious, blah, 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 and I overate because I left it too long for or too long from breakfast. Then when you check it again on Tuesday and when you check it again on Wednesday, you notice that, oh, geez, that happened 3 days in a row. I didn't know I was anxious when I was eating. I didn't know I was leaving myself too hungry coming up to that meal. So I ended up gorging and leaving myself stuffed and feeling like lethargic after it. And if you have a food journal, it can make you recognize these patterns, and then you can make a change, because awareness is like the first step to solving these issues. And a food journal is the best tool, I think, for increasing your awareness when it comes to your own, let's say, eating habits or impulses.
Agreed.
Okay, so making peace or honoring your hunger. When you're hungry, you should probably eat, and when you're full, you should probably stop eating. And you need to understand that those signals tell you how to eat the right amounts. Then principle 3, make peace with food. So there's 3 points with this one. Challenging food rules and restrictions, embrace all foods without guilt or judgment, and experiment with permission-based eating. So first off, why would you want to make peace with food?
Because what's the opposite of peace?
Anxiety and stress, and anxiety and stress.
Yeah, make peace, because that the alternative is not somewhere that you want to be. It's like you want to be you want most things in your day where possible to be a peaceful experience, but especially when something is going to show up as consistently as food, you don't need a constant
Stress.
threat. Yeah, it's like, oh, breakfast is going to be a stress. Lunch is going to be a stress. Every snack that I have is going to be a stress. My dinner, oh, don't even start me on the biggest meal of the fucking day. And so it's like, if that's how you feel about food, it's like, it's going to be, we kind of talked about this a little bit, kind of something similar when we talked about the ladies who were on too low of calories and couldn't lose weight because it was just so stressful that they really couldn't even take it on and manage it properly. And when you started giving them more food and a reasonable amount of calories, they kind of started saying, oh, well, actually, you know what? I'm actually losing weight now because it's the first time I've been able to deal with food that it wasn't stressful. And so again, that's what's really important. It's really, really important.
Just to inject there as well, and then overeating after. Like,
oh yeah, of course, yeah, exactly, yeah. That's what it's like. Yeah, you can't
just being stressed about your food doesn't necessarily make you gain weight.
But you're being stressed about your food, so you end up overeating. Exactly, you're like, oh, let's fuck that plan. Like, even the thoughts of that plan make me stressed. I'm not even going to try and implement it. And so, yeah, it's like if every meal is a stressor, well then it's going to be very, very hard to kind of get any kind of consistency with it or any kind of passion for it. It's like we want it to be easy, we want it to be enjoyable, and we also want it to be the right amount of challenging. It's like it should be engaging enough that it makes you kind of have to switch on a little bit, that it's novel. It's like there's areas for growth, but we also don't want it to be something that breaks us every single day. And again, what happens when something's overwhelming? It's like you just need to step away. Okay, and the last thing you want to need is to step away from something that's supposed to be nourishing.
Yeah. And so how do you think you could challenge? Why do you think challenging food rules and restrictions would help you make peace with food?
What do you mean by food rules?
So like, I'm only allowed to eat before 6 o'clock. I'm not allowed carbohydrates with my breakfast. I have to make sure that I don't have any takeaways for the rest of the month. I'm not allowed to have sugary drinks. I'm not allowed ice cream. All these different rules and restrictions that basically make you, let's say, compulsive, or not compulsive, like, what's the word, like restrictive and just set,
rigid.
Like, rigid. That's the word. Yeah. So like a lot of people, like, do you ever hear, oh, I couldn't have that, I'm not allowed that. oh, are you allowed this on the diet? Are you allowed, silly questions like that? Well, I wouldn't say silly, but
Yeah, interesting.
So the reason why I would say you should be challenging those rules and restrictions is to show that like nothing really bad happens when you do it, and that nutrition isn't this thing that it has to be perfect at all. Like at the end of the day, it all comes out essentially the same way. It's just they have different effects.
But again, actually, well, you're kind of opening up another thing. Not really, in a sense, it's like, the quality of your stool really matters as well. It's like, it's like what comes out is a good indication of whether or not things are, what going well or not,
Yeah.
too.
But what
I understand what I mean, but yeah,
all I
that's
mean is
another,
that yeah, no, you're right. You're 100% right with that. But all I mean is that if your nutrition is 80% good, like you have 20% for a margin of error, which is like loads. So you can lose weight and you can have ice cream. Like, did you ever hear all the Instagram marketing and all this sort of stuff? Here's how you lose weight and get to enjoy the foods that you want to. Like every single one of those people who say that, all they say is like, cut your calories back to a way that you're going to lose weight. Here to the place you're going to lose weight. Okay, and then all they say is like, okay, now these ones here, these foods that you absolutely love, they must be in that plan somewhere, so that you don't feel like pulling your hair out and that you can never have them again. So you don't break your diet. So that way they're in your diet and you can keep your diet going and still enjoy your foods, but it still fits within, let's say, your macros and your calories.
Or we're going to introduce a version of that food that's lower in calories and probably higher in protein too.
Well, yes, you could, but also I think I don't like doing that. I don't like.
Oh, I agree. Listen to me.
I remember I tried.
Did you make the Greek yogurt and flour pizza?
No.
Then don't talk to me. And that's I don't mean I'm only like slagging. Did you ever make one of Zach Chug's like chip and spicy mince meals?
Yes.
Oh
yeah, no,
man,
I'm saying
like there is versions out there that are like, I mean, it's like, don't sacrifice. Like, listen, I'm all for like, listen, fuck protein pancakes in place of regular pancakes. Like they're a very poor substitute, but
actually,
the best of a bad lot.
On that point,
here we go. You love protein pancakes.
Just on that point, all right. You can make protein pancakes, or you can just have regular pancakes that are really, really nice and don't taste all proteiny, and just have them with a protein shake, and you're good. You get the protein.
Like, lots of stuff like that.
So
I'm with you.
But the point anyway that I was making was that there's these things called like fiber one bars. Okay, fiber one bars.
And did I not introduce you to them?
No, I had them before that. Mixing them in with some Greek yogurt is actually unbelievable. But I got them as like a wee snack to have instead of having like chocolate or something in the house. But they're like so small, like they're just undersized so that you're not satisfied with it. So you need another one, and then have just like the right amount of crunch with the chocolate in them. So they just make you want that extra bite every single time. For me, anyway. So I find that like swapping it instead of going to the fiber one bar as a substitute for something that only half hits the spot, just get what you want and just make sure it fits in your calories. If you want ice cream, if you want a Snickers, if you want a bloody Mars bar, dairy milk, whatever it is, just have it and incorporate that in with your calories. Because what I ended up doing was eating 5 of the fiber one bars, just one after the other, and it's about 500 calories. Or I could have had a big dairy milk and been like, happy days. And I still wanted something after it, which is the most annoying part about it.
I don't know. To be fair, fiber go bar does it for me. Like I mean, let's say like I might have 2, like 180 calories or whatever that, but it's like that's good quality cake. Like, that's literally 90 calories a cake. They basically just made a cake and cut it up into 90 calorie sections. It's unreal. Yeah.
Well,
kind of does hit the spot for me. I think it's really nice. But as I said, it's like, yeah. What are you seeking? Are you seeking fullness or flavor? Because it does it on the flavor end for me.
Yeah, a bit of both. That's what, ideally a bit of both.
Yeah.
All right, so so challenging the food rules and restrictions. Simple stuff like, Joe, if you're on your diet, like go out and have your drinks with your friends, have your things, and understand that like there will be, let's say, negative consequences to it where you will be slowed down from your progress, but you also got to enjoy your night out. And like there's no end date. There is no end date for you to lose the weight or for you to get healthy or anything like that. You have your whole life. Like you can't really fail at this. You can just keep trying until you get it right. And if you're going out drinking every single night, or going out for drinks and eating and meals and all that sort of stuff, like 3-4 times a week, well then we need to sort of figure out a different strategy for that. But don't feel guilty. Like one of the things that happens a lot of the time, especially with our lady clients, is they will get anxious about an upcoming event because they don't know how that they will like still keep on track with their food. And the advice that we usually give them, or that I usually give them, is either, all right, we can come up with a plan to make sure that you stay within your calories and you stay within your targets while you're out. To understand how many calories is in a drink, what food to eat, what to ask for, what to say no to, and all that sort of stuff. Or you could just go, it's fine. I'm going to go out and enjoy myself, and then I will hit the ground running the next day. It's fine.
But depending on how frequent it happens, like in some cases, like listen, you just can't go. You can't like maybe you can't go out every week with your ability to stick to the diet plan as is, and like I said, like your time frame, like you let's say they do have a time frame, like let's say it's their 50th birthday in 6 months, and they really like it means the world to them that they'd be back to the dress size they were on the 30th. Like it really means that they're crying their eyes out about it. Like 3-4 months ago, they've got good momentum under their belt, and they've managed to get semi-consistent with the nutrition plan during the week. It is again that meal plan that's just right for their calories, this, that, the other. But they also have a very active social life, and they have been plateauing for the last 4 months or month, let's say 4 weeks, because there's been something on every single week, and they like to have a little drink on the weekend. It's like again, so they're heading out with the gals for Wednesday brunch, and they're going out with their brother and sister on the weekend. It's like maybe you can't.
America or Australia or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Like maybe you can't have it each way. It's like maybe you'll have to drop the brunch to once every 3 weeks. It's like or something. It's like, or again, maybe you'll have to go and make the absolute smartest decision in the world, or you're gonna have to cut back on the meal plan that you're already kind of feel like you're low on the calories anyway. It's like it's just like sometimes you really are in a little bit of a tight spot, and it's like sometimes the social life might have to take the hit. It's like, or maybe you might have to sacrifice your goal because it's just not manageable right now.
Well, so I think I think that's like a little bit of a side thing for this, because this is you're right in your point. If someone has a deadline and they have to make a goal by a certain time, and that's when restrictions start to get a little bit more intense and anxiety starts to rise. But this is for someone who's trying to learn how to eat intuitively. Does that make sense? Like this is, and that's the main goal, is like we're trying to learn intuitive eating and how to eat based on how we feel and all this sort of stuff, and like challenging the food rules. I don't know about you, but I'm like one of these people who, I need to learn the hard way. I need to do, like, you could tell me, Joe, don't do that. That's not going to work. Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, well, I still have to try it anyway and find out for myself. Even though you'd have full video evidence of everything not working.
Oh yeah, I have to walk the line.
Yeah, exactly. And challenging food rules basically allows you to do that. So it's like, oh look, by the way, if you go out and you eat like shit and you go drinking or whatever it is, it's going to have a massive impact on your results on Monday. So you can either challenge it and go, all right, prove me wrong, and go out, get pissed, get your takeaway or whatever it is, and then weigh in Monday, and you're like, oh shit, and you can learn the lesson the hard way. But doing that consciously and being aware of the repercussions and that lesson and that emotional weight of weighing in on Monday, where it's not a good one because of what happened then. Well, then you might be like, oh crap, I don't want to do that again. So then the next time you go do it, you're like, oh, how do I measure it, or how do I make it a little bit better this time? Well, it's like, instead of drinking bloody 7 or 8 pints, have a wee gin and cinnamon tonic, or have a few of them, and then make sure you're proteined up before you go out. And then when you do have your meal, wherever it is, pick like the steak or pick something that's protein heavy, and then get your carbs and vegetables like steamed or baked or boiled.
Yeah, again, yeah, you're basically just talking about good habits essentially.
Exactly.
Like, yeah,
so
you want to move away from the person who's just an absolute carbaholic and doesn't do any kind of protein, or it's like somebody who doesn't eat any vegetables or fruit. It's like to somebody who's just kind of starting to introduce them. It's like, so we're just kind of, listen, we're just trying to grow closer in the right direction. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, and you don't have to make huge sacrifices either to feel like you're making progress towards your health and fitness. But there are some things like weight loss that is like it's a numbers game at the end of the day, and depending on, like as you said, it's like, listen, if you've got 6 months it's like to lose 5 pounds. It's like, listen, you've got a pretty large window for error there. It's like you can have lots of nights out, we can do this and we can kind of do this. It's like, you know, it's not that big of a deal that you want to have a wee night out. And as long as for the vast majority of the time, you're doing well. It's like, let's say you're on a 6 week challenge, it's probably not the smartest idea. And again, like we can kind of talk about 6 week challenges and how they kind of reinforce all this other stuff. But again, it depends on who's doing it. It's good for like a challenge. It's like, again, especially if you are somebody who has kind of the basics covered anyway. But for somebody who's maybe struggling to do that, it's like it could just create like a very
Anxious
very
environment.
pressured environment. It's going to increase anxiety and all this kind of stuff, and possibly lead to a relapse. But the big thing is, yeah, in general, it's like, listen, what are the lifelong decisions that you're going to make look like? It's like if you really want to, like, let's say for talk's sake, let's say you're at the result. Let's say you got the result. How do we maintain it in a healthy and positive way? That's kind of what we're looking at long term. And also, hopefully, it's like if you do, have anything drastic, it's like that's realistically what's going to be the constant habits that reinforce the things. Like for talk's sake, it's like, do you have protein at every meal? Do you work out 4 times a week? Do you try and apply progressive overload to all your workouts? Do you go for a walk most days? And it's like, if you do all these things, are you guaranteed to get a result? It's like, no, because there's, specific things there, but it's like, but is that the widest base of the pyramid? It's like, yeah, that's the foundation. And yes, all the specifics matter on top of that, of course, given your, chosen result. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, context is very important when it comes to your nutrition. It really does, like context, but
without that base, it all falls apart.
Exactly. Now, so challenging food rules and restrictions. Another point on that I think we should be talking about, like all the different rules that people have. Don't eat past 6 o'clock. If that's a rule, a hard set rule that you have that like you have to follow, otherwise everyone's going to fall apart. Eat 5 minutes after 6 and see that nothing bad happens, or have a snack in the evening and understand that like the reason why you're doing the not eating after 6 is because it's a conscious decision that you have to do, not something. Or it's a conscious decision that you want to do, and it's a way that you want to eat, and not something that you have to do or that you should be doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like yeah. Do you the cool thing is like, are you following the rule just because it's a rule, or are you following the rule because you understand why and are making that informed decision?
Exactly. And like it says no carbs, have some carbs like guilt free. It's not a big deal. It's fine. Or if you're doing keto, it's okay to have a meal that's not keto every once in a while, and the whole world isn't going to fall apart. Because without challenging the rules, you can basically become like. Do you ever hear the story of the horse who is like tied to, or a baby elephant? Sorry, who's tied to the post, and he's walking around in a circle and he can't pull the post out. But when he's an adult, he still has the thing. He's still got a post, but he could just rip it out if he wanted. But because he's been conditioned his whole life to basically walk around in the circle, he just stays in it. He doesn't challenge it at all. So challenging it helps you break free from all these different things and realizing that, you can have your cake and eat it too sometimes.
And so a big kind of thing on that is like, do you like learn the material? Like the other side as well, it's like, do a bit of research. It's like if there's any rules, well, like what's a part of the challenge? It's like look at both sides of the argument. So if like let's say you're a keto head, it's like look up the pros of carbohydrates. If you're a carbohydrate head, it's like look up the benefits of keto. It's like, and so again, just kind of starting to understand that it's like an awful lot of these things meet in the middle, which is good. It's like you want to find the balance of both.
It's really important to understand that both sides have pros and both sides have cons. And if you're all in one camp, well then you're basically an ideologue, and you don't really think for yourself. You just have a certain set of rules of thinking, and you can't really think for yourself. So that's really it's very important to expand your knowledge base and understand, let's say, what the opposing or what the value the opposition is giving you. So like if you are keto head or if you're carnivore, like what are the pros of carbs? Like carbs give you lots of energy. And what are the cons of carbs? You can have these little crashes from having a spike of energy and then feeling really low after it. But again, it's not saying that one is better, one is right and one is wrong. Everyone has different body types. We live in loads of different environments. The gut bacteria of people who live in India are completely different from the people who live in South America. How they respond to carbohydrates and how they respond to meat and different foods and different bacteria and different sugars and all that sort of stuff is very, very, very different. and people are different. Nutrition is different in different places. People absorb different nutrients differently as well. Like, we're not all the same, and I don't think it's right to expect everyone to be the same as well. So, challenge the food rules, and then embrace all food without guilt or judgment. So have your ice cream. Don't feel guilty about it. If you want it, you want it. Enjoy it. Decide to enjoy it. Don't eat it with shame and guilt. Okay, and if you're eating it with shame and guilt, that's a big red flag. Like, if you're eating your ice cream and like, oh, I feel so bad about this, it's a big red flag. You should be looking at that and being like, why? Why do I feel shame? Why do I feel guilty about it? Number one, because there's probably a should or a shouldn't behind that. I should be eating something healthier, or I shouldn't be eating this right now. And then that's like if you should be doing it, why aren't you? So what's the reason? I really want it. It's really tasty. Well, why do you feel like you want to sacrifice your goal for this taste right now? Because maybe you're a little bit stressed, you want to feel better. That's usually what it is. You just want to feel a little bit better, and it makes you feel a little bit better. And I think acting like food doesn't make you feel better is only going to make you, or it's only going to reinforce that unconscious behavior.
Denial.
Exactly. It's not just a river in Egypt. So yeah, embrace all foods without guilt or judgment, and just be aware that if you do feel guilty, or you do feel like you're judging, or even judging other people as well. So like, if I remember when I was doing low carb before, you start like you're sort of like, oh, you're gonna have all them carbs with that. Like, it's weird. It's weird the way you get put into those little mindsets. So yeah, don't.
But
be
even we can judge in the positive as well. It's like, just like judging people like into so and so would never do this, so and so is perfect. It's like, how do you know? It's like, who made you the judge? It's like, who made you the person who says what's good and what's bad? It's like, and this is where we're coming. It's like challenge it. It's like, it's like, maybe they're not. They'd find out, dig a little bit. Like, maybe the best of the best are eating sugar. Maybe the best of the best have a cheat meal. It's like, do you actually know? Are you actually informed? Do you have objective things? Like, objectiveness, I find, is very, very, very important as well, because we can get lost in the subject. It's like, again, how it makes us feel, how this, how that. It's like, listen, it's like, you like we talked about this. Like, you can have pizza. Like, there's people out there who are making pizza work for them. It's like, and
have you seen the BJJ world champion?
What's his name?
I forget. He's a young fella. He's a really young.
Yes, I do know exactly what you're talking about. I think he does OMAD.
Is it?
Yeah, he does one meal a day, and he basically eats like pizza and pasta at like 9 o'clock at night. But again, like, his calories all work out in the end. But it's like, yeah, it's like, listen, it's working for him. I'm not sure what his physique is like though.
He's lean. He's like,
yeah, he's a skinny wee bean again, because it's not a very high protein diet, and
it's sport specific.
Well, no, that's insane. No, I'm not saying he isn't a good performer, top Brazilian. I'm just saying, it's like, in terms of, because this is the difference. It's like, it's like, are we talking about physique? Are we talking about performance? Are we talking about health? It's like, what are we talking? It's like, there's layers to what your food is doing. And again, an awful lot of that comes back to, is like, listen, you could be eating for health, and we talk about orthorexia, and be very mentally unhealthy because there's no enjoyment in it for you. It's like, and so it's like, overall picture, not very healthy. Whereas this kid is like, listen, in terms of his ambitions, and again, now, I don't know actually what he eats, but let's say, for talk's sake, he only eats pizza and pasta. Like, there's lots of nutrients that he's missing out on. It's like, but in terms of overall life fulfillment and positive mental health, it's like, does that outweigh the fact that he hasn't got enough vitamin fucking K? Like, in terms of his overall well-being, probably. Could he just take a supplement and still be a world champion, still have great energy, and then also go through a back door in order to get whatever things that he's lacking, a super green and a thing, if he wants to be well rounded. It's like, but it's like, is it working for him? Is it good enough? Is he healthy? Is he happy? It's like, there's lots of different layers to it. It's like, whereas somebody who's really fucking obsessed with getting every single micronutrient, like, before they even tried to become a world champion, like, this will never work. There's no point in even trying. Jesus, it's like, well, listen, let's challenge that belief a little bit. Like, let's give it a go. It's like, he doesn't eat fucking breakfast, lunch, or snacks. He just eats. Oh man, it's like another thing that kind of bends the rules a little bit. It's like, listen, maybe it'll work. Oh no, you need constant supply of energy if you're an athlete. Let's see.
Yeah. Well,
And again, maybe that, and again, like what you said, maybe that'll only work for him. You know, just like, you know.
Everyone's an individual, and the goal here is to not do what everyone else is doing. It's just to find out what works for you. And what works for you is it doesn't cause you too much stress, although it can be stressful in the beginning to learn new foods and to try and like impose some sort of structure where there was no structure before. Like that can be stressful, but it shouldn't stress you overall in the long term. And you should be enjoying your meals or feel satisfied from your meals. Like after it, if you had it and you can say, I don't feel overly full, I'm satisfied from it, I don't really want to eat anymore, and it was tasty, well then you're good to go, and then you're filled with energy for the rest of the day. Or for
Sorry, what was that list again? Was nutritious part of that?
Was nutritious part of that? I don't think I said nutritious, but it should be.
Yeah, because I feel like obviously, like again, that's like a big crux of it too. Is like you're supposed to be doing all this while trying to get some, and
But
ideally a fair amount of vitamins and minerals in too.
yeah, but right, usually if you are satisfied from it and you know how you feel after it, it will probably be nutritious as well. So like if you feel satisfied from a meal, so if you have, let's say, just steak on its own, okay, you'll feel like I challenge anyone to do this, or just have chicken on its own, or have some sort of protein just on its own, and you eat it, you'll feel like a certain sort of lack of like oomph from it. Although you'll feel full and you'll feel nice, and if you've just carbs, you won't get that sort of fullness, but you'll get what you were lacking when you had just the protein. And when you don't have any vegetables or minerals or micronutrients or anything like that there at it, you'll feel like some sort of a lack from it. But when you get like all three and you get fat in there as well, so the meal is way more satisfying than if you're just eating one macronutrient on its own. So listening, and this is one of the reasons, one of the pros for intuitive eating is that you recognize how it makes you feel, and you make adjustments based off that. So if you felt like you still wanted a little bit more carbs, you needed a little bit more carbs because you did a heavy leg day that day or whatever, so have a little bit more. It's not the end of the world. So, and then after that, experiment with permission-based eating. What do you think that means?
So that's a good fucking question. I'm not sure. I don't really understand the context. Permission,
Okay, so
giving yourself permission to eat certain foods.
Yeah, exactly. So it's okay to have your ice cream. It's okay to have your pizza. Give yourself permission to enjoy yourself.
Okay.
And then actually enjoy it. And then when you have that permission to do it, and you know that you can whenever you really want, well, then the impulse sort of will die down just a little bit.
Yeah, again, back to the conversation about denial. It's like if you start, like again, like I've got two very young kids, and one thing I'm very, very aware of is hard nose on negative behavior. It's like some things can just be ignored. It's like if I see Mason or Zach playing with something that they shouldn't be playing with, I'll kind of like watch them very carefully, and then when they put it down, I'll just kind of try and remove it. Whereas if I'm like, oh no, don't do that. It's like, well, actually, what I really did was I highlighted it to you, and so then that's very, very, very tantalizing to a toddler, because they're
Or
just
your
like,
inner rebel, or your inner toddler.
yeah, 100%, exactly, yeah. And so it's just like the best thing to do is, and again, some things need addressed. It's like, hey, don't do that. It's dangerous. That's really, really dangerous. Please stay away from that. But again, if it's not dangerous, if it's just something that's not really desired, it's like, listen, let's set up the environment in such a way that, we kind of try and limit and remove most of those things. But also, we're not trying to highlight things that they might try and go out of their way to get. And also, yeah, like the other thing about it is like if we were to tell the kids, like, you're not, like, one thing I'll do, like, for talk's sake, is if Mason wants some sweets or something like that, it's like I'll give him a small amount. I might initially, try and give him a better offer. Not even a better offer, just a different offer for something that's more nutritious. Like, again, if he wants something, it's like, oh, are you hungry? Would you like this? And if he says no, it's like I might give him a couple of sweets or something like that. But then, like maybe like an hour later, he might ask for something. I'm like, oh, yes, you can have this and this. And I'll give him both. And he doesn't really feel like the banana is, like, if I go, oh, you can have this if you eat the banana first. He might go, well, I don't want the banana. That's not what I wanted. Whereas if you offer both, you're like, oh, hey, you can have these. It's like, oh, what a lovely pairing. a muffin and a banana, as opposed to just saying no to one and yes to the other. It's like, listen, yeah, you can have both here, and neither of them are bad, and hopefully we don't then what would that we don't segregate the banana or the fruit or the
Why
vegetable.
why are you doing that with them?
What do you mean?
Like, why are you being cautious around that? Or
Because
not?
I
Why are you
don't.
being cautious? So just why are you being cautious about hard nose, and why are you giving him the option to choose for himself?
Because I want him to naturally have a good relationship with food. I don't want him to have like extremes or to be afraid of anything or to, not be able to. I suppose early on what it is I just don't like. I know that sweets are hyper palatable. I know it's going to take no effort at all to get him to eat sweets. Obviously, it's like shit food is not hard work at all for young kids. Simple carbohydrates are not hard at all, really. It's like, but foods that are generally not hyper palatable could easily then be excluded because he won't recognize that he's hungry. He won't recognize, or he won't be hungry. He won't notice that he's malnourished. It's like, but he knows that he can get energy and food, and the instinct to eat is going to be satisfied. But he could easily do that without getting any kind of quality nutrition. And I don't want to create an environment where like we're denying him what he is now aware of in preference of food that maybe isn't as palatable, whereas it's all just kind of included together. And obviously, again, in the favor of better options. It's like we don't really try and keep too much shit in the house. I seen a great idea the other day. It's like, listen, like I generally, when Mason asks me for most stuff, I'll just tell him yes. It's like you can literally have whatever you want because hopefully most of the stuff in the house is good for you. So it's like we're like, yeah, you want a banana? Yes, no problem. You want a strawberry? Yes, no problem. It's like, what, you want some dinner? Yes, all right. You want some potatoes? No problem. It's like you want a muffin, right? Cool, have that as well. You know what I mean? It's like you can have whatever you want in in the situation that we've set up. Most things that you have are going to be nourishing anyway. And again, some things are just nourishing for the soul. Some things are just nice to have. It's nice to have a treat.
Yeah.
It's one thing I've really noticed about grandparents and even myself, like especially me. I'm with them all the time. But it's like people love to treat kids. Like they just want to get. Oh, I want to be responsible for you just having a little nicety in your life. And it's like we tend to want to do that for ourselves and can kind of get carried away from, you know, it's like, is like this just because we want to have nice things in our life? Is like, are we having a good, well-rounded, balanced diet?
Well,
And
you're
those,
trying to give the kids like a really nice experience as well. Like how
of
much
course,
joy, like if you gave Mason, like, let's say his favorite ice cream, whatever it is, and he eats it, like, oh,
yeah, I
thanks,
love
Dad.
that.
Yeah, like how does that make you feel?
Makes me feel great. And that's the same. That's what I was going to say. Like, you find that people can kind of just get dulled into just doing that the whole time, and that's
Yeah,
not good for the kid. But
yeah.
again, we do it to ourselves all the time. Oh, another
Sometimes it can be
takeaway.
selfish.
But
Sometimes
but
it can be
sometimes
selfish.
but sometimes I notice that it dampens on the kids. Like
To take for
it's not
granted.
it gets to a point where it's not a treat anymore. It's
Mm,
expected. It's
yeah,
expected, and the same kind of response isn't there anymore because they're used to it.
yeah. And then it
Whereas
becomes a thing where it's like, if I don't get it, I'm upset now, rather than
yeah,
yeah.
100%. And so again, now
And I
it's
think
now.
with just I think the reason I asked that is I think this is perfectly analogous to what we are talking about with eating food without guilt. Like just the reason why I think you're doing it is because you want them to be able to eat intuitively and to not have these like hard no's or hard yeses on different kinds of foods. And I think it's the right approach. And I think if people try and treat themselves the same way you're treating Mason, you can have this and you can have this. It's your choice. You get to have both. I think it's a really good way of making sure that you're not eating with like anxiety or compulsively, or you're not going to develop any shoulds or shouldn'ts, or this is good or this is bad.
We've got 3 minutes, Chris, and we have to wrap this up. But interestingly enough, something that's very, very like something I'm very conscious now with Zach as well is again avoiding contact with those hyper palatable foods where possible, because once you kind of set that standard, it's like it's kind of there, and then also the frequency as well. Like for example, when Zach was born, like Mason, to be fair, was very, very, very good with food, like extremely good with food. He'd try anything, all this kind of stuff. And then I got really sick with COVID, like fucking, like I was out of commission for like 6 weeks. Like I was done. And Chloe had a section, so she was something similar. And so we were trying to deal with Mason and a newborn, and an awful lot of it was coming through convenience. And generally, convenience food are very hyper palatable. And it took us about 6 months to roll it back to a normal level, because once he kind of got the taste for it, it was very, very hard to go back to that nice normal level of where like, oh no, this is a treat. Oh, like this is fine. This is a treat. This is what normal is. Because it became where normal was hyper palatable for a long time. And it was a very, very, very hard cycle to break because he's a fucking toddler. You know? And so it's like he doesn't have the maturity. You couldn't really reason with him. You know what I mean?
It's just like what feels good, what doesn't.
What feels good, what doesn't, and if it doesn't feel good, we're probably gonna lose our shit a little bit.
Yeah.
And also we don't have unlimited resources now in terms of time and attention, because we have to give it, like I'm working full time, Chloe was working, semi full time at the time and full time with the newborn. And so, it's like it's very, very hard. But I just wanted to use that as an example because, as I said, it's like once you reach that point where that's what you're used to and that's what's normal, and this is kind of why I like fasting, is like that reset is super important. And Zach still has never had that, and unless we, have another emergency like me going down and Chloe going down, it's like that will never happen with Zach. It will be a gradual kind of thing. But like Mason was essentially living with Chloe's mom, and she was giving him treats, and then I was seeing him and I'd give him a treat, and then again there was the convenience thing on top of that, and so it was a very, very complicated situation. Like, and again, nobody was just fucking neglecting him, but it was just like, listen, sometimes these things happen in life, and you get into these situations, and some of you guys possibly listen.
Like, as the parent or as the adult, and you meet the kid or whatever, you want the kid to think you're cool. You want, like, I feel like people look for a little bit of I don't know, like validation or something like that to like get the kids to like them. So like with the losers, they'll come in with treats or whatever it is. They'll be like, hey,
of course,
here's chocolate bar. Oh, Uncle Chris brings chocolate. Where's Uncle Chris? Like silly stuff like that. I think nanas do it. I think uncles do it. I think aunties do it.
And it's great. It's great, but because we didn't have control in our own home, and then that was happening regularly as well as normal, it was a very like we basically killed a lot of momentum with Mason, whereas we were doing so well. And again, thank God we've got it back. But like it takes a long time to kind of fine tune what normal is, especially if you aren't very emotionally developed. As Mason wasn't, he was a toddler, and some people are toddlers in lots of ways. Like, aren't we all? Like, we all have kind of these underdeveloped aspects of ourselves, even though we're absolutely kicking ass in this area of life. We can still be neglected and maybe have work to do in this area. And nutrition is generally one of them. And the point that I suppose I was trying to make, as well as the points that I already made, was that some of you guys, I know I was there. It's like, maybe that's where you were landing when you were younger. Maybe that's why you're the way that you are now, is because, it's like you were just kind of thrown into this hyper palatable situation and nobody had any control or any ability to kind of help you navigate your way out of that by introducing certain foods, by again not highlighting these extremes. And so, it's like the very, 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 chemical habitual thing that's happening. It's like, listen, you're just reactions going off in your brain. And if there's the reaction strong enough, the pull is strong enough, the automatic behavior is generally going to follow, and it's not without implications. I think there can be some serious fucking, mental health issues that are associated with, maybe your energy levels, maybe where your health's at, maybe your self-esteem by how you look, maybe, just shame and poor beliefs around food that would be better other ways, and so you kind of know it, but you
don't
can't
really have the skills
put
to
it in
fix
practice. Exactly.
Yeah, that's really that's a bad place to be in. It's a frustrating, sad place to be in. But on that note, you've got a class to lead. I've got some work to do. Guys, it was an absolute pleasure. We got through principle 3. Next week, we will be challenging the food police in principle number 4.
Peace.